You ever seen those videos of somebody running a long distance race and most people finish tired, but you ever seen those videos of people that are so exhausted they basically just, you can see they're just about to pass out from heat exhaustion, and they're staggering. They're not even limping, they're just staggering to get over the line, and everybody wants to rush out there and help them, but they know that if they do, they'll disqualify this poor guy. And just with his eyes rolling back in his head, he manages to stagger across this finish line and then collapse into the ground, heaving breath. And you wonder if the guy's going to survive. Well, we passed a tax bill, and that's exactly what it looked like and felt like. Hi, everybody. I'm Bill Whittle here with Steve Green and Scott Ott, and this is your tax bill edition of the end of 2017, brought to you by the paying members at BillWhittle.com. Bless their little hearts. And those members will have some more money to pay for other people to become members, and you who may not be paying will soon have the money to be able to pay for your own BillWhittle.com membership, because tax cuts are coming your way for most of the American people. Now, needless to say, the left is very upset about this. Nancy Pelosi said it's the worst thing to happen. I think it was Pelosi said it's the worst thing to happen since the Fugitive Slave Bill, and it is. And other progressives have said that it's the end of the American Republic, that they're basically stealing America's future, and we are. But we're not stealing America's future, and it's not the worst thing to happen to America since the Fugitive Slave Law. It's the worst thing to happen to Democrats since the Fugitive Slave Law, and it's also the worst thing to happen to Democrats as far as looting the Treasury goes, because if people start seeing more pay in their paychecks, they're going to start thinking differently about all this. Steve, let's start with you. I've thought now for many years that things like, it would triple the prices of your health care, and that would get people off of liberalism, and we'll do all these other things, independency, and so on and so on and so on. In other words, I thought that the stick of reality being administered to the rump of the American people enthusiastically and over a long period of time would be enough to change their mind about voting for these policies, but it didn't. And now it did. It got us. This president got us a different kind of a new start. But my question for you is, Steve, how do you think that the carrot's going to work? How do you think people are going to feel? For instance, in 2017, we're at the stock market's up 35%. We're at above 3% GDP. Jobs, unemployment's down to 4%. If Obama had accomplished all of these in 8 years, he would have been praised to the heaven. So what do you think about the idea that a tax cut means an even more expanding economy, more jobs, better pay? How does that feel to you in terms of the politics of the midterm election campaign in 2018?
It feels like winning.
It smells like victory.
Obamacare is still around, well, sort of, but I'll get to that in a minute. Obamacare is still around because the press kept spreading these scare stories of 13 million people are going to lose their insurance if the evil Republicans take away their Obamacare. And that got enough wavering Republicans to go, because, that's what they do. And President Trump, who I've admired in a lot of ways in this last year, actually kind of sabotaged the effort to repeal Obamacare. And that was my major disappointment of 2017. Yeah. However, there's a huge difference. There's a huge difference between being told that your family is going to save $2,500 a year on insurance and then find out that your premiums are doubling every year, and then being told that the Republicans are going to hike everybody's taxes and finding there's more money in your paycheck every 2 weeks. That's a huge, huge difference. In one case, the Democrat media complex lied to people about what Obamacare would do to them, or do for them, however you want to phrase that. Now they're finding out that, or they will find out over the next few months, that they've been lied to again. They'll be lied to again about the effects of this tax bill. People are going to have more money in their paychecks, and I think they're going to love this. And President Trump is a damn good salesman, and I think he's going to capitalize this in ways that the GOP, especially the GOP Senate, failed to during the convoluted, tiring, double marathon way that this bill became law. So The difference is it's going to be crystal clear. And the advantage we have going into 2018, and I've been working under the assumption that the Republicans are going to lose the House in this next year. I hope they don't, but that's just been legislate like there's no tomorrow, because there might not be. You know, get it done. Yep. So I've been working under that assumption. Or I wish they had been working under that assumption this last year. Maybe they will in 2018 with this big win under their belt. But we don't have to pull senators over the line to repeal something. They've already done it. Now we get to feel the effects of it over this next year, and I think it's going to feel pretty damn good.
I think so, too. Scott, I'd like to talk about the salesmanship aspect of this because, as always, we're flying into a media headwind which gets more fierce every day, although more fierce, less effective. You hear things, as we said, that, this is a tax cut for the rich. I saw a breakdown that said that people in the poorest bracket will only get a $10 tax cut, while the richest people might see $69,000 in tax breaks. And I thought, well, if you're paying, $400 a year in income tax, if any at all, you're going to see less than if you're paying millions of dollars and so on. Yeah. So there's this whole thing. Yeah. But there's one little thing about this tax bill and how it was sold and how it got through that had a very Donald Trump feel to it in terms of his almost like a personal touch. And that was when a number of large companies, I'm pretty sure GE was among them and Boeing and so on, that they announced that because of the tax cut, all of their 100,000 employees are going to get a $1,000 bonus. Now, that sounded like Donald Trump to me because that was a tangible, immediate, pre-February, pre-May. Here it comes. We got the tax cut, says Boeing. Therefore, every one of the 100,000 people and other companies as well, big companies, we are going to give them a $1,000 bonus. Now, it's my personal feeling that the CEOs of these companies did not volunteer this. It's my kind of feeling, I don't know, but it's my kind of feeling that Donald Trump basically made some calls and said, listen, if you gave every single person, you got 100,000 people, right? And and we give them all a $1,000 bonus. That's what, $10 million?
Are you asking us to do math?
Whatever the number.
Yeah.
It's so pathetic.
I used to be able to divide. There would be no math.
Oh, no. I'm going to have to re-edit this. In any event.
Did you see these slack bovine-like faces on Stephen Green and Scott Out when you asked us a math problem?
Just embarrassing. It's so embarrassing. I can't believe I'm having to do this. I'm more ashamed of this than I am of having voted for Walter Mondale. You've got 100,000 employees times $1,000 equals $100 million.
That's a lot of money.
Oh,
yeah.
Is it?
100,000. 1,000 times 1,000 is $1 million.
$100,000. $100 million.
Yeah.
Okay, so basically, picking up where we left off before this whole thing went off the rails,
that's right,
because we can't do simple decimal math live. Here's, I think, what basically Donald Trump said. He said, listen, what would it cost to give everybody in your company a $1,000 bonus? And Boeing said, well, it would cost us $100 million. Okay, how much money do you think you're going to save if we get this tax bill through? Well, we'll save a lot more than that over 7-8 years, a lot more than that. Trump said, okay, I'll get you the tax bill, but you have to give us this in order to show the American people that it's worth it. What think you, Scott?
Well, I think there may be something to that, although I can't testify. I mean, there are a couple things that come to mind here. Number one is, as a person who lives with most of the rest of the middle class in this country, I'm hearing all this talk now from the left saying, well, $1,000 isn't much. I remember when I was in when I was in office, if you tried to cut a nickel from the county budget, then it was going to be a disaster. And then in the next breath, they turn around and they say, well, it's hardly anything, so why bother cutting a nickel? And you'd be like, okay, well, see, on the left, they view reductions in taxes and reductions in government spending as expenses. Like those are, when government cuts taxes and cuts spending, somehow that's a negative for you, my friend. And so, I forget the phrase they use. It is so Orwellian that I can't even...
pay for tax cuts.
Yeah, you got to pay for tax cut, and it's like that, but it may not even be that phrase. But it's that idea. It's not just that you have to pay for tax cuts. It's like whether the government cuts spending or cuts taxes, both of those is a negative for you. Number two, $1,000 is not $1,000. So let's say I get $1,000 more. You know what $1,000 does for me? $1,000. Let's say I put that in my mutual fund. Okay. You know what $1,000 does in a mutual fund at a stock market that's going up at the rate that this stock market is doing? $1,000 is a lot more than $1,000 there. Or let's say I take that money instead, or maybe I do a little bit of each, but let's say I take that money and pay down credit cards. You know what $1,000 does, paying down a credit card balance where you're getting dinged for an extra $50 or $80 a month on your credit card bill for interest alone or whatever?
Great point.
Or let's say I paid down my mortgage a little bit early. You know what an extra $1,000 payment does to your mortgage, reducing by vast periods of time in the long run if you got a 30-year or 20-year mortgage? So the time value of money is not taken into account by these lunkheads who say $1,000 doesn't mean much. And then, Bill, I think wisely pointed out when they say, well, 80% of the benefit of the tax cuts is going to go to the super wealthy. Well, the super wealthy pay 80% of the taxes. So it's like,
and it's not just that they've got. How can you expect a person who has a $20,000 a year income to get a $69,000 a year tax break?
That's right.
Bill, let me explain Democrat math to you.
Let's just go back and explain to you percentages, which we couldn't do multiplication earlier, but we know enough about
shocking. A lot of it's being on TV, because otherwise I could use my fingers and toes.
That's right. You could remember Chiz and Bop? You could do it right on the desktop with your fingers. So anyway, that's I think that we don't even see things the same way the left talks about it. Read the New York Times, listen to NPR for a day, and you will discover that a tax cut is a terrible thing and reductions in government spending are devastating.
Scott, the Democrats don't talk about it. They don't say these things because they believe them. They say these things because they want to keep the money for themselves to spend it to buy more votes.
Well, but that's not what they tell themselves, Steve. That's
it's
true.
All true.
That's
it's
true.
all true. But all of the liberal mouthpieces that we hear in society, both politicians and people in pop culture, are fabulously rich. And for them, it's true. Not only is $1,000 nothing, but any kind of boost to their income is essentially superfluous for most of these, opinion makers. So these people, these artists and musicians have 25 luxury cars, with they're $500,000 each. What the hell is a $6,000 tax refund or tax break for them? Nothing. Of course they have nothing but contempt for it. But for those of us out here in the real world, and those of us trying to run little businesses, it's a significant, enormous deal. And this is why I think that this thing was so important, and why I think that idea of Trump, basically, if it was Trump, and it's just got to be, announce to your employees that they are all going to get a $1,000 bonus. Boom.
Now,
go ahead.
And Bill, I was just going to say, on the messaging end of this, that's not enough, though. I mean, I think that was smart, and I've seen those stories rolling out one after another. But we've got to learn from the left in how you do the messaging. It's one thing to say GE or some big company has given a $1,000 bonus. Now we need to start telling the stories of individual human beings, couples, and every single one of them should be a person of color. This should be like
all the time.
Yes, every day the White House should reveal another video interviewing for 2.5 minutes somebody and saying what
gets to go to college, because that's right, exactly right. That's exactly right. That's a great point. So look, I've maintained for a long time that payroll withholdings is the end of the republic, because, and I mean this sincerely, because the federal government is so powerful because it's got so much money, and the reason it has so much money is because your taxes never. The money that the federal government takes in taxes never touch your fingers. Yeah. They never go into your bank account. You may have a $600 a week salary, but you get a $430 a week paycheck, and you always have. You don't miss the missing money because you never touch it. If you had to write a check, as business owners do, 4 times a year for 5 figures of tens of thousands of dollars, in my case, in taxes, if you had to part with the money once it was in your bank account, there'd be riots in this country. So for the first time in my memory anyway, for quite a long time, we're going to see the miracle of payroll withholding work against the Democrats. People are going to go and pick up their regular paychecks, and for the first time in memory, there's going to be more money there than there was before. So now we'll see whether the carrot has more of effect than the stick. And as I think of this for the first time ever, just on the spot, our entire society is based on the carrot, and failure societies like socialism is based on the stick. So who knows? Yeah. Maybe a little extra cash in people's pockets will be enough to break them out of this idea that somehow we're beholden to give other people all of the product of the sweats of our brows and be fortunate to keep a few shreds for ourselves. Maybe we'll get over that idea.
So you want Donald Trump's carrot top or Nancy Pelosi's riding crop? You got a choice.
I am not going to sleep for days.
No,
just to
what
avoid
has been
the
seen,
nightmare.
what has been seen cannot be unseen. I need some eye bleach. Oh.
Sorry.
Oh. We deeply apologize for this, ladies and gentlemen, and we'll see if we can't get some kind of warning label on the beginning of the show to protect the more sensitive members of our audience. I'm Bill Whittle here for Steve Green and Scott Out. That's your right angle. We'll see you next week.